Welcome everyone to Europe in 1356. Yeah, I'm gonna be playing, well, this is a bit of a distraction. I'm gonna be playing the new MEIOU and Taxes mod for European Universalis 4. I haven't played EU4 in like forever, and so I'm probably gonna suck really heavily. But since this mod just got released in beta form, I'm very interested in it and I'm gonna be checking it out now. In case you do not know, EU4 is a grand strategy game from Paradox where you take command of a country in the early modern age. So normally in the game you would go from 1444 to 1821, and in MEIOU and Taxes you push that starting date back to 1356 to the Golden Bull of Charles IV, which gave the Holy Roman Empire the kind of shape that we are used to knowing it as in this period. And it's also quite coincidental that in China this sort of coincides with the time when the Yuan dynasty, the Chao Yuan, was falling apart and various different successor states were trying to grab control of China for the Han, eventually resulting in the Ming dynasty. As you can see, Yuan Zhangju, the founder of the Ming, is quite good. He's a 666 ruler, so he's the best that it could be, essentially, for that. But we're going to be playing as Muscovy. I had a choice between Muscovy and Novgorod, the other big Russian power, mostly just because, well, again, this is not going to be a main focus of mine playing this mod, but it's just something that I'm gonna do every once in a while, and I do want something to talk about that I know a lot about, and I definitely know more about Russia in this period than other countries in Europe. I do not know much about Germany in this time period. I do know a little bit about Italy, of course, because it's my home country, so I do have a bit of additional education in that regard, and I just wanted to have a decent time. Yeah, pretty much. So we're in game. We are in a period in 1356 Russia where things are very interesting. Now, the White Horde is the big power. Now, the Mongols. The Mongols came about a little over 100 years ago. In 1223, I believe, was the first contact between Russia and the Mongols. And since then, the Mongols have been a powerful force in Russian politics, because essentially they conquered Russia. They defeated the Russian armies in a huge battle on the Kalka River, which is around here, in 1223, the first time they met. Then the Mongols fell apart because Genghis Khan died, but then they came back, they conquered Russia, and then they invaded Europe through the southern steppes. So most of the south of Russia was taken over by the Mongols, and indeed there's still a bit of a vestige of that control in the form of the White Horde. Now, the White Horde is what is a part of the Golden Horde, so they can reform that. The Golden Horde being the successor state of the Mongol Empire in Europe. And they convert to Islam, so they also have that going for them. And they're a bit of a nuisance. We are divided into multiple different principalities because the way Russia worked is that they're a successor state of the Kievan Rus. The Kievan Rus was founded with the capital of Kiev, and Kiev was the most important principality, ruled by a prince, a knyaz. And eventually, that kind of structure was very, very decentralized. So when the central power in Kiev fell apart, when the Mongols sacked Kiev, there was, of course, a huge breakup in the unity of the Rus. And so now we are divided into tens of different principalities, but we're still kind of all claiming to be the successors of what that state once was. As you can see, our dynasty is the Rurikovich. The Rurikovichi, or Rurikovichi in Russian, were the successors of Rurik, the founder of Russia, in the olden days of 860-something, legendary founder who probably didn't exist. But yes, so if we go ahead and look at a lot of our neighbors, you can see that their dynasties most often are Rurikovich as well. So some of them are different. For example, Lukinich, etc. Various different branches exist, but Adayevsky also. But mostly they are all claiming to be the successor state of the Kievan Rus. So if we go into our decisions, you can see that we can form a Russian nation. And that is the successor state of the Kievan Rus. Of course, we have a lot of competitors for that, but we're going to be talking about that later. Yes, all these principalities do kind of war against each other very often, much to the benefit of the Mongols, who were able to sort of maintain control over the various different Russian principalities because of that. Now, in this particular time in history, most Russian principalities essentially paid tribute to the Mongols and gave them sort of semi-vestigial authority over the land. This would continue up until 1480, so very much into the future for what we have. But since the control was very much nominal and not direct, we are still an independent state considered by the game, so there's not much problems with that. We do have a ruler. Now, he's Ivan II, and his son is Dmitry Donskoy, who was the first Russian ruler to lead a successful campaign against the Mongols, as the name suggests, near the Don River, Donskoy. For some reason, he's at age 6 is already called that by our people somehow, even though that is indeed a honorific name that was bestowed upon him later. We do have two vassals. We have Rostov, not this Rostov, that Rostov. There's two cities in Russia named Rostov, well, more probably, but there's Old Rostov on sort of the European plain, and then there's the steppe, Black Sea Rostov on the Don River. Not really quite sure as to why they decided to name a city Rostov on Don. But yes, the other one is Galach. So we have two vassals, and that puts us in a bit of a strong position compared to some of our neighbors. We also have quite a lot of territory, because Moscow was founded essentially to be a big trading post on the Muscovy River. Pretty much the same name as the city in Russian. And that kind of gave it a leg up on a lot of its opponents in the central part of Russia, except Novgorod. We'll talk about Novgorod once we get to it. So let's get to start. Now, we can get a mission. We have free. Save the Russian people in Voloklamsky, which would be in Novgorod's control. That would be to take over the province. That's probably not a very good idea, because Novgorod is very powerful. Improve relations with Tver, or create an army. I'm going to create an army so that we get additional army experience and prestige later. We can choose a policy regarding our vassals, and I'm going to enact a policy to increase tribute, so that if we go to our subjects, they will be paying us more in tribute annually, etc., and monthly also. So we're going to be getting more income out of them, which is very important, because our income, if we go ahead and look at our ledger, which to be fair has to be updated still, taxation is the biggest share of income, then production, vassals, and trade. So increasing any of those is going to be pretty much our top priority, so that we get a bit of a leg up. Then what else do we need to do before unpausing the clock? We did recruit one cavalry. We do have some more money, so we can recruit a unit of infantry as well, just to bring our army up to scrap to complete the mission. We do have free advisor slots, but for now we won't be recruiting any because they're very expensive, 80 ducats per month, and right now our income is not the best at all. We do have some unrest, but that's going to go away soon. And we need to select some rivals. Now, Novgorod, interestingly, has not rivaled us. And I'm going to return the favor and not rival them, because I do not want them declaring war on me at random. But Ryazan, our neighbor to the south, did declare war on me, or declare me a rival. So I'm going to rival them, because I don't like them. I'm also going to open this up, and I need to build a spy network in some of our neighbors so that I can claim their territory and make it cheaper to take in war goals. So Klyazma and Murom. Klyazma, we could get them as an ally. but I'd rather use my alliance slots for someone a little bit more powerful than this one province minor. So I'm gonna build a spy network there, and then my last diplomat, I'm gonna send them to get a royal marriage of Nizhny Novgorod, who is the town to the east of us. Now, let's just start. I'm gonna put it at speed 3 initially so that it can fire all the events that it does. We are at great eminence, which is okay, so that it can, in peace, without having it at maximum speed, perform all the events and calculations that it has to. Because MEIOU taxes is an overhaul mod that increases a lot of the game's complexity. New Metropolitan. So our Metropolitan has passed into the arms of his maker. With the position vacant, the church will approach our patriarch and send another one. Since we lack a reigning patriarch of our own, we have no choice but to accept whoever he sends us. Let us pray that he will be the leader the church needs. And so we sent to Constantinople now. Looks like they have some problems. Noble rebels. Okay. Essentially, we are in, of course, the Orthodox camp of Christianity. And that means that we owe fealty in general to Constantinople, because in 1356 Constantinople was still around, and we do not have a patriarch of our own. That if I get time to talk about orthodoxy and the Orthodox politics of Russia, then that's going to be a very important topic. The topic of patriarchs, metropolitans, and in general religious fealty to one state or another, because it was really interesting. And there was some events popping up, but nothing too important. So at this point, we're just going to be waiting for our troops to recruit. Of course, by this time in Russia, we still have about a system of generally a medieval levy to recruit armies, because while there was a little bit of influence in the military system of Russia from the Mongol invaders, they didn't really adopt the way in which hordes mobilize their population. The Orthodox faith, there's just a bit of lag at this point because the game is calculating things and people are declaring wars. The Ottoman Empire, well, still not the Ottoman Empire, but the Ottoman Sultanate, I guess you would call it right now. The Ottoman, I guess, embryon. They're still trying to expand in Anatolia. I'm gonna do all religious events because they're probably very interesting. Okay, so we also have a new decision. Estates. Now, estates are a mechanic in MEIOU and taxes where your land is not really entirely controlled by the state, and this uses the autonomy system that is already present in the normal game. The game is supposed to have an estate system as well, but I do not have it. It would normally go over here, but do not have the DLC. I do not have any of the DLC except, I believe, El Dorado it's called. I do not have the DLC required for the interface of that to come into effect, where every province and every sort of little territory in your country is controlled by different estates. That would be, if we go ahead and look, for us it would be the greater nobles and the lesser nobles. But for example, for Novgorod, they would also have burghers, because, and burghers not as in hamburgers, but as in bourgeoisie. So city dwellers who are powerful enough to sort of own and maintain their own businesses, etc., etc. And these control a amount of your lands. For example, among landed estates, our greater nobles control 62% of the territory and have an annual income of their own, and maintain troops of their own, which we can call upon during war. So for example, if we go ahead and look at the Greater Nobles levy, you can see that they have a force limit, just like us, just like the state. They have a force limit, and they recruit their own troops. For example, if we were to get in a war, we can call upon the one regiment of infantry that the Greater Nobles maintain as their own army. And of course, all of this can come back to bite you. Now, the bureaucracy is your own state. Missing localization. Still a beta version. This is where we check out our stability. Stability is up here. It represents essentially how stable your country is. You may know it from the normal game, except instead of having just a button that you press, where was it? Oh, we have a Regency Council. Oops. Wait, I didn't get the event for that. That's a problem. That's a pretty big problem. So I don't think we can declare war if we have a regency, which is bad. But I guess that. Oh, I also forgot to send a merchant. Okay, but I guess that gives us more time to build up our state. So where was I looking? Right, there's supposed to be a stability button somewhere, but again, I haven't played this game forever, so yeah, stability. Normally there would be a button here where you can spend some monarch points to, which are essentially your mana, as some people call it, to increase your stability. You cannot do that. You have to wait for stability to tick up. With these points, we get 12 per year, and we need to get to 150. Right now we have 10. So to get to stability +1, we're going to need to wait for something like 12, 13 years. Depending on what happens, because of course different events in the country can change the level of stability. Then we have a development level, which is low, and there's a reason for that. A core level, which is respectable, and an education level of 3. Of course, all of these give you different modifiers. We won't go too deeply into these. And yeah, right now, I don't think we can declare war because of the fact that we have a regency. So for example, nope, we have a regency council, so we cannot start wars. We're going to have to wait for... And yeah, that would be a very good time to declare war on Novgorod because they broke off their alliance with Pskov, which is another Russian republic. Yes, Novgorod and Pskov are republics, unlike the various different... well, officially they are a principality as well. Their rulers are supposed to be princes, but they're called Masatniks in MEIOU and Texas, which is actually a historical title. It means kind of a counselor, leader. We could get an alliance with Novgorod, but I don't think that's a very good idea right now. It would be a very good time to attack them, but again, we have a Regency Council, so we cannot declare war. Royal marriage from Rostov. Yeah, sure. So we got very unlucky and the ruler died right at the start of the game. So we cannot get a war going, even if we wished. And we did wish that. We need at least 2 rivals. We can rival the White Horde. Or we can rival Lithuania. Both of them are much stronger than we are, but I'm going to rival the White Horde. Mostly because Lithuania, hopefully, is going to be busy with European affairs. Let's get... now, I was waiting for the new cavalry regiment, and there's also a infantry building there. Okay. So we do have to create an... Oh. Please finish that. I accidentally canceled the cavalry. Yes, so we did create an army for our nation. We can conquer Pronsk. Where's Pronsk? Pronsk... Oh, okay. So in the territory of Ryazan. Problem is, we cannot declare war. So let's take the royal marriage with Nizhny Novgorod. Because we are going to get the... we do have an alliance with them anyway. So a royal marriage is pretty much a good idea. There. And we get some extra diplomacy bonuses from that. Rival or rival, Lithuania's opinion of Muscovy. So let's take that. Let's improve our relations with Lithuania a little bit. Once our diplomat, of course, comes back, we can do that. And yes, so we are the enemy of the same enemy, aka the White Horde. Okay, fine. And now we have our army almost together. Let's lower their maintenance so that we get a little bit more income. We save some money. And also we are gonna ignore corruption for now so that we get even more money. Now normally what I would do in MEIOU and Texas to get some money at the start is to go around and attack some neighbors and get their own money, partially through looting, because you can loot provinces. If we go ahead and look at that province, you can see that it has this modifier, local wealth, which means that there's essentially wealth there that doesn't necessarily belong to the state, so it doesn't really go into our income directly. But this is all stuff that belongs to our states and our population, which is up here. this is what normally would be development in EU4, and that normally just sort of grows and kind of naturally becomes new development, and of course later that becomes an income for you. So you do want all of this to be up in your provinces, but in enemy provinces and provinces belonging to other countries, this all means that whenever you can attack them, you can loot this stuff and of course get some extra cash for that. But of course, since we don't have a ruler, we can't really declare war, which is sad. Monastic town. Monasteries were often found in the deepest wilderness as a way to enjoy splendid isolation and would allow monks to devote themselves to God without allowing the sins of the world to interfere, of course. As a self-sufficient community, monasteries ended up farming marginal land, providing to others if it was usable. Peasants would often settle in monasteries, creating busy towns that around one quiet monasteries. So we get a monastery town in Uglitch, which is to the far north of our domain, here in the forest, in the middle of the forest, of course. And yes, in general, these is just one of these events that can, of course, give some growth to your lands naturally and dynamically, which is fine. Now, monasteries in this time period, pretty much in all of Europe, but in Russia as well, were mostly a center of culture as well, because... Who's that at war? Oh. What's Venice doing in the middle of Hungary? Not sure. Yes. Seems like Venice is at war with Hungary. Since mostly literate people were apart from two classes, the clergy and the nobility, the two sort of top orders of medieval society. And in Russia, this was no different. Mostly education came from those two classes, and then the nobles, even though most of them were educated, well, in fact, the vast majority of them were educated, they didn't really, especially in, for example, Russia in this time period, they didn't really contribute to literary production, things like that. Sometimes they did, but mostly culture came from monasteries, and partially through copying of ancient texts, partially through, writing chronicles, writing various different forms of religious texts, etc., etc. So the monasteries were not only a important unhappy population, not good. So we get some tax less, but that's only minus 0.5%, nothing important. So let's actually increase the clock timer. Yeah, so monasteries were not only important for the lower classes, but they were also important for the higher classes in that they were a center of culture as well. And that sort of ties into the education system that they added in MEIOU and taxes. And it's quite fitting that despite the low development of Russia, if we go ahead and look at our I think it was estates into bureaucracy, stability, and national quality. So we're supposed to have, of course, well, now we get an average development. Okay, so I guess we increased our development level. But yes, despite our relatively lower development to the rest of Europe, we still have a decent level of education. That is because while there is a bit of a trope that in this period the Russians were a bit of a barbaric folk, they were in reality pretty much just as educated as the rest of the world. They had a pretty thriving cultural baggage left from the days of the Kievan Rus. I'm just going to be checking, sorry if there's no music, okay. I was just checking the time because I gotta go in a few minutes. And yes, so that kind of helped establish the foundations of what is later going to become the new Russian state. Now, while we're waiting, let's talk about why Moscow is in the position it is in 1358. Now, I already talked about the sort of divisions of the Kievan Rus that eventually, partially due to the, I guess, brute forcing arrival of the Mongols, destroying forcibly the political power of Kiev, partially also because Kiev was already in decline by then, and partially because of the dynastic sort of policies and politics of the Kievan Rus, because, as I said, all these principalities were very decentralized. they were only nominally sworn to Kiev. Kiev was the Grand Principality, and the other principalities were just principalities. What does that mean? It means that all of them were essentially considering themselves on an equal playing field, on an equal level. And the Grand Prince in Kiev was only a sort of mediator, by their laws, of course. In the early days, supposedly, of the Kievan Rus, it was a little bit different, and the Grand Prince had a little bit more of a role in all of the other principalities, but generally speaking, all of them were mostly semi-independent, and there was also a pretty shitty custom, if we are talking about how to maintain a medieval state, in that there wasn't really a well-designed succession law, and I think that would that problem gets only solved in really the later stages of the Russian Empire. So, for example, after Catherine, I believe, a stable succession law is introduced to Russia. So after Catherine the Great, which is 400 years from now. So this is going to be a pretty big problem for a long time for Russia. And that, where's the royal marriage? Oh, we do have a royal marriage, and we do have an alliance. Okay, fine. Essentially, there wasn't really a fixed line of succession. There weren't really succession laws, per se, and there was a pretty shitty custom that rulership passed from brothers to brothers, from elder brother to elder brother, instead of from, of course, father to son, as it was the case in Europe. And that was... Who claimed Kolomna? Oh, Bizan, fine. That, of course, gave rise to a lot of civil wars for succession. Mostly famous would be, I guess, the civil war between... I don't remember exactly the name of the guy. I think Sviatoslav and Boris, which gave rise to the first saints, Boris and Gleb, in Russian medieval liturgy. So there's a lot of various different civil wars happening by the time the Mongols are already kicking at the doors, and famously recorded, all of these are in various different chronicles of the time. And of course, that kind of helps the Mongols come in and smash in the door, and the whole edifice comes crumbling down. At this point, though, about 100 years from the first contact with the Mongols, well, a little bit more than 100 years, but yes, Moscow has sort of centralized a little bit more control over, of course, central Russia, partially due to dynastic policies, partially due to the fact that when the Mongols came kicking, all of the... build a great palace. Prestige and legitimacy. Well, all these are very low in supply. Prestige and legitimacy are quite important because they give you various different bonuses in general, which are kind of hard to come by, and often they tend to decrease themselves, especially because we're in a regency. We have uncontested cores, so we have, if we go to the diplomatic map mode, we have all these core provinces that we aren't attacking people for, so that, of course, is decreasing our prestige, because people think we are weak. And we can't do that because we have a Regency Council, so we cannot declare wars. And then, because we are in a Regency, we reduce our legitimacy every year. So we're going to take the Great Palace. It's only 12 ducats, so about a tenth of our treasury. It's a very good way to shore up our values here. Now, what was I talking about? Yeah, essentially, the center of the Kievan Rus initially was the southern area, of course, around Kiev. But as the Mongols devastated that area, tons of people migrated, tons of people and also of rulers, so both political and economic power, migrated to the northeast and to the southwest. So that to the west later came under the influence of Lithuania and Poland. So of course, that would essentially became Belarusia in the Lithuanian sphere influence, and that which became Ukraine later in the Polish Commonwealth sphere influence, what we now refer to as Ruthenian in this time period. Rival of a rival, yes. So we have improved relations to Lithuania, fine. We could get an alliance with them, but we don't have the alliance limit for that, so we're gonna avoid that. And right now, there's also not Christian yet, so that's fine. Vassalize Tarusa. Can we do that peacefully? No, we cannot. So I guess that's not a very good idea. We could improve our prestige. We'd only need to get to 50, and we are at 23. The problem is, our ruler is still like 9, 8. So we're not going to be able to declare war on people for a long time, and that's really the main way you get prestige. We could also try to do some... I believe there was a way by, oh, because we have a Regency Council, we cannot donate state lands to the church. That's sad. And we cannot do other things related to religion. Can we get any support that would increase our prestige? Legitimacy, greater nobles, demand support. Nope. So we can't really get any prestige from anywhere. Well, who are you allied with? Tver, Karachev, and Kliazma. Karachev is down here, and Tver is up there. So I guess we're gonna take reclaim Barovsk. Eventually, we're gonna be able to do that mission, and also I'm out of time. But yes, very quickly, Moscow essentially became a big trading center on the Muscovy River, and partially because of all the essentially migration that had happened towards the north of the Kievan Rus, it became strong enough to rival Novgorod and consolidate a lot of different territory under its control. Partially also because of dynastic policies they inherited Vladimir Suzdal. Now Suzdal right now is under the control of Nizhny Novgorod, but Vladimir, another decently big city for the time, as you can see, they have a 2 urban population as opposed to Moscow's 3 and Novgorod's, I believe, 4. Yep. All of these, of course, were factors that increased Moscow's power because, well, they were able to be much more consolidated of a state than their rivals. Also because later the Muscovite princes were often appointed grand princes by the Mongols. The grand princes during the Mongol period were essentially big tribute collectors for the Mongols, and so partially because of sucking up to the Mongols, partially because of the migration to the north, and partially because of the good trading position on the Muscovy River, Moscow became very important. So I'm going to join you next time for some more Hearts of Iron 4. That's what I'm used to. For some more Europa Universalis 4, where we hopefully are going to wait for... Yeah, I'm actually probably going to wait for the Regency to end, and I'm just going to show you interesting things that happen in the meantime. Hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.